Hello again everybody, and welcome back to Decode Tech. So last video we introduced our project idea, and in this video we're going to go over some widgets we can use with this GUI. That's like buttons and different labels and various things. But let's start off by modifying our main window we were able to make with just these 3 lines of code. So a quick refresher, on line 1 we're importing the tkinter module, and we're saying as tk so we can just reference everything within it as tk rather than spelling out tkinter. Then on line 3, we're creating a tk window object. That's going to be our main window. And we're storing that in a variable called root. Another common variable name for that is master, and we'll see that a little bit later. And then on line 6, we're saying root.mainLoop to start the event loop to handle whether buttons are clicked and all different kinds of user interactions with our GUI. Alright, so root is our window object. So part of my goal with this series is to teach you how to learn, specifically how to learn from the basics. So you have the basic understanding. Now you want to Google and read and find out things related to the project you're working on, in this case tkinter. So I'm going to type in Python W because when you're working with a GUI, I think you need W. Not sure if that stands for window or what that stands for exactly. And then just the name of your file again afterwards. And TK is the title of our window. So since we're making a store manager or store management system, maybe we want to change that to say store manager. So how could we do that? Well, let's go over to Google, and we're working with tkinter and Python. There's different languages that can work with this TK graphical interface. So keep that in mind. You might want to add Python. You don't always have to. But I'm going to say window title. And then here it says using tkinter and Python to edit the title bar. So let's check that out. And of course, they asked their question on how to do it. And then down below is probably somebody's answer. And you see down here they have a root.title. So there's a title method. And it looks like you pass in the string of the title you want for your window. So let's go back to our program, and before our main loop, let's type in root.title. And you see IntelliSense actually brings it up for us, and it's a method, so we need parentheses and then a string of what we want our title to be. And I'm going to call it store manager. So I'm going to save and run the program. You see we get STOR, and it gets cut off, but if we stretch it, we see we do get store manager there. So what if we wanted our window to start off a little bit bigger? Well, that's probably another attribute of the window, its size. So let's go back to Google and let's quick search tkinter window size. And I'm going to scroll down till I see one that looks like what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to go with this constant size one. We might want to be able to resize our window, but they'll probably at least have something in here showing you where to set the size. Okay, now down here I found a geometry method, and it says you want the size of your app to be 500 by 500. So let's try that out. I'm just going to copy and paste this, go back to our application, and then I'm going to say root, and then .geometry, and we'll save and run again. And you see now our window is bigger by default, and we can see our full title up there already. Lastly, let's try changing this feather leaf to something that more fits our application, which is a store management system. So I'm going to save you a little bit of work and know that you need a .ico file. And I'm just going to go to Google and search free ICO image or icon. Then I'm just going to select this one from icons-icons, and I'm going to type in store, and I'm going to go down to page 2. I've already found this ahead of time, the one I like. And there's this nice little store image here. And then I'm going to select the ICO to get the ICO format. And your download should start automatically. And mine started down there in the left-hand corner. Looks like it's done, so I'll go to my File Explorer to Downloads, click on it. And first of all, I'm going to rename it to store-icon, hit enter. And then I'm going to move it into my Store Manager folder, because if it's not in your folder, you have to specify the direct path to it. So let's go back to our project, and you see store icon is in there. And now we need a way to manipulate our window object again. So I'm going to quick go back to Google, and I'm going to search tkinter window icon. And I'm going to click on the set window icon, and it looks like icon bitmap is the method we want to use. So I'll go back, and now this takes the path to your file. If your file's in your directory like ours is, all you need is a string and the name of the file. If it's not in your directory, you have to put the direct path like C / whatever. And actually you might want to use / because Python thinks of backslash as a special character in your string. And so if you use backslashes, you need to use 2 backslashes for every destination in your path. But I recommend just using a /. But mine's in the same folder, so I'll just put the name of my icon and I'll save and run again. And now you see in the left-hand corner, we have a little picture of a store. Okay, so you really should have an idea of how you want your project to look before you start building it. And it's okay if that changes over time, but you should at least have a base, something to go off of. So I just made a quick sketch of what I want my main window to look like. And there you see we already have the title done, the icon done. But now I have some buttons here. I want to be able to add a sale. Remember I said we're going to have a store management system with sales and stock orders. So I'm going to start with working with sales orders, and I have a button to add a sale and a button to delete a sale. I have a search box, and then I have like this table looking thing that's going to have all my individual sales. And then at the bottom, I'm going to have a bar with some information like the total amount of sales and things like that. So these things, these buttons, these search box and all this stuff is known as widgets. And in the Python world, it's just an object. But in the GUI world, it's referred to as a widget. So we want to look up a tkinter widget to say add a button. Let's start adding the buttons. So I'm going to search Python tkinter button. And now there's many good sources, but one I really like is effbot.org. And here it has some information on it, and then here is a sample code. So what I want to take your attention to is, okay, so they have their import statement. We already got that done. And notice the capital T, that means they're using Python 2. In Python 3, it's a lowercase t. And then they have their main tkinter window, and they named it master. A lot of people name it master or maybe parent or root. We named ours root. And then here they have a function. Let's skip over that for now. And down here they have a button. So this is a button object, and they're just storing it in a variable called b. And now you pass arguments to this button. Master is their main window, so that's where they want the button to go. The text is what they want the button to say, and then the command is something we'll get to in a little bit. So let's try creating a button. So I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to write a comment just to help us visualize a little bit what's going on. And so we need a variable name. They called theirs B. I'm going to call mine add sale button. And so now we want this button object. The problem is button is not in our namespace. In other words, we don't have a class defined button in our namespace. Instead, it's in the tkinter namespace. Now in their example, they use the import star, which imports everything from tkinter straight into their namespace. And I had a video on modules that covered that if you're interested in learning more. But we kept it with as tk, so we have to say go into the tk module and get us the button object. Now notice, or remember rather, that capital letters signify a class instead of a function, but they both need open and close parentheses. So we have a class button. Now the name of the widget we want to put it in, or the window, is root, and the next thing was the text we wanted to say. So we're going to give it a string, and that's plus, and we'll say sale. We're going to leave off the third option command for now. And next, you'll see that they have something called pack. So we need the name of our object and the .pack method. And this is something called a layout manager. And I'm not going to cover this in depth in this video. That's actually probably what our next video will be over, is layout managers. But basically, pack just packs this widget in at the most convenient location. I think it's generally right at the top of our window. So for now, we're not going to get too detailed with our layout. We're just going to pack these widgets in. So let's save this and let's run it. And you see we get this little button at the top of the window that says the text we said to. And we can click it and it doesn't do anything. And we'll look into that in just a second. So if you look at their example, it has a function. And down here it says command gets callback. So basically what this means is you write a function that you want that code to execute when the button is clicked. It might be referred to as binding a function to this widget. And so we need to name our function. So I'm going to say def add underscore sale. And I'm just going to print clicked add sale button. Later on, we're going to do more with this, but just for an example, I just say that. Now we need to add another argument to our button. And we're going to say command gets the name of our function, which is add sale. Now, normally when we call our function to run it, we have open and close parentheses after this. But what's going to happen is Python will come through our file top to bottom. And if we already have the parentheses there, it's going to run that function as soon as we run the program. And we only want that function to run when we click the button. So we're actually going to take this parentheses off and just pass in the name of our function. And then behind the scenes, it'll handle when that button is clicked, actually calling that function, or essentially putting those open and close parentheses on for us. Okay, so let's go to our debugger this time, and let's click the play button, and let's click the sale button. And now you see down in our terminal or our console, we get clicked add sale button. So normally in a GUI application, you won't want something printing to the terminal, at least if you want the user to be able to know what happened. But it's a good way for testing to see that we're actually getting interaction with our button like we were trying to. So that's good news. Now if we go back to my diagram, we'll see that we also had a delete sale button. So let's just copy this code here, paste it down below, and instead of add, I'm going to say del for delete. And then instead of plus cell, I'm going to change the text to minus cell. And instead of add cell function, I'm going to change it to del cell. Then I'm going to copy this function, paste it right down below, and change the name of our function. And once again, we're just going to pack that button in for now, and let's run the debugger. And now you see we get the cell button right beneath it, and it still says clicked add cell button because, like it's easy to do when you copy and paste, you forget to change the text to delete. Now I'll run again. If you click cell, it says clicked add cell button. If you click delete, it says click delete button. All right, what comes next? Our search box. So what's hard to know is terminology in GUI programming. So this search text is actually known as a label. So what we're going to do is just search tkinter label, and I might put Python on the end of that. I'm going to go to the EFF bot link, and once again we have that boilerplate code there, and here's what we're actually interested in, this label object, and it's pretty similar to the button. It has the window we want to put it in and the text we want, and we're packing it in after we're done so we can actually see it. So I'm just going to copy one of these. First of all, I'm going to make a comment, search label /entry. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to change this to search label. Now instead of doing a button widget, we're doing a label widget. Still placing it in root, and instead of the text of minus cell, we're going to have search, colon, I'm going to put a space just to make it look a little nicer later on, and get rid of the command. Then we have to copy this and make sure our pack is packing on that search label object. All right, now beside that, we're going to do two at a time here, is what's called an entry box. It lets you enter text into a box on one line. So you should hopefully know the drill by now. You could Google it, but I know what it is. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to say search entry gets tk.entry. I'm going to place it in root, and that's all I'm going to do for this one for now. Then I'm going to say search entry.pack. I'm going to save, and now let's check out our application again. And you see now we got our search label in our box. Now, of course, because we're packing things in, it looks really dumb and not like my layout, but once again, we'll get to that in a future video. All right, so the next thing where we have our orders is called a tree view. That was pretty hard for me to find when I was trying to figure out what that thing's called. So I'm going to search tkinter tree view. And it's actually kind of hard to find good documentation on this one, but this site's decent. So we're going to create a tree view object, and notice that it's ttk instead of tk. So we're going to have to go back to our code, and we're going to have to import ttk from tkinter. So we're going to say from tkinter import ttk. Now I'm not 100% sure what ttk is. I'm not sure if it's just a namespace or if it's an object or what it exactly is. But basically it gives better theming or styling to tkinter stuff. We could actually change all these tk buttons and labels to ttk, but I'm going to leave those for now. But we're going to use ttk to create a tree view. So I'll make another comment, and I'm going to say order tree gets ttk, not tk, dot tree view. I'm going to place that in root, and you can give it something called columns, and I'm going to pass it a tuple with my column names that I want to refer to them as. For now, I'm just going to put ID and date to correspond with my layout of ID and date, my first two columns. Next, I'm going to define a little bit more about those columns. I'm going to go back to my tree view help online, and you see we can say dot heading and then use the name of the column. So here they have column 1, we're going to use column ID and column date, and the text we want to say in the heading. And by heading, I mean these boxes that say the ID, the date, customer, and so on. So let's just copy this, go back to our code, paste it. Now their name was tree, but our name was order tree, so we need to change that. Instead of 1, we'll use ID, and the text we'll just use ID and closing parentheses. Now I'll copy and paste that, and we'll change both these to date. Now we'll do order tree, and we'll pack that like everything else. Save, and let's run our program again. And now you see we get this big table that stretches outside of our window. And you notice it has a third column. That's kind of annoying. It does that by default, and there is a way to get rid of it. Thanks to a person online. He said to put in the name of your object, use like a dictionary syntax, and do show, and then do gets the string of headings, I believe. And so show is kind of like columns in your tree view. It's like another option you could use, like show. So we could actually probably do it straight up there. And we'll look a little bit more at what that means later in the series, there's different ways to change these options than right when you initialize the object. So let's try that and see if it gets rid of our default column. So I'll hit start. Oops, I got an error. Let me try lowercase s on that. There we go, that was a problem. Good, now we got rid of that blank column and we got our two columns of ID and date. And by default, it lets you resize those columns. So the tree view is kind of a neat little widget. So somebody already did a nice bit of coding behind the scenes to allow these widgets to have this functionality built in for us, which is really nice. All right, one last widget to look at here. We have a running total at the bottom. So we're gonna actually make two labels for that. Because we'll see later when we're updating the total number, it's easier to keep that as a separate label. So I'm just going to go back to my code. Once again, make a comment, say display number of sales, and we're making labels. So I'm just going to copy from previous labels, paste, and we said we're going to do 2. So I'll paste again, and I'll change this to total orders label, then copy and paste. And I'm actually going to just copy and paste it onto all of them. Instead of label for the last 2, I'm going to change it to value because this is going to be the actual total value, even though it's still a label. But it'll help me remember the difference when I'm working with them later. Then I'm going to change this text to total, and this text will just default it to 0 for now. So let's save that and run again. And there we get our total and 0. All right, one last thing I want to cover as far as structuring our code and a little bit of something to keep in mind is these button functions need to be defined above your buttons because you can't use the name of the function until it's defined. But if you followed along in my Python's basics playlist, you know there's a way around this with a main function. So I'm just going to go ahead and restructure my code with a main function. So in line 4, I'm going to say def main to define a main function. I'm going to take my top code here and indent it. I'm going to take these functions out and I'm going to put them down at the bottom. Move the search entry up, the sales button up, just to group it together nicer. Then I'm going to take all this group of code and indent it, move that up. Now notice my main loop. This is going to go inside our main function at the very end. It's very important that it comes at the end or you're going to get frustrated with your program not acting right. Now notice these functions are outside the main function. And then down at the bottom, we're going to do the whole if name equals main, and you should know what that means by now. If you don't, I have a video on it. Go check that out. And we're just going to call main. Now our functions can be below our buttons, and it's nice because they were kind of distracting in the middle of everything before, but now we can keep them all nice and orderly down at the bottom. So let's run it again, make sure everything still works. Click our buttons, make sure the functions still work, and they do. Alright, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this informative. Let me know in the comments down below if I went too fast or too slow. Once again, this code will be on GitHub, so feel free to check out the link into the description and download the code. And please do mess around with this because I'm a firm believer in the more you actually code, the more you learn. If you want to see more videos more quickly on this subject, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Please subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video on layout managers, where we'll start to make this GUI look a little nicer. So until next time, God bless.